In this in-depth tutorial series, I will walk you through making a basic animation in Clip Studio Paint, beginning with an empty project and finishing with easy movement, smooth shading, and beautiful After Effects. This video series is for true beginners, so I will explain in detail all of the steps as I go through them. So let's begin. I am working with Clip Studio Paint Pro at the moment, which means I am limited to 24 frames, but this won't affect the quality of the animation. We'll get that canvas and we'll bring up the timeline again. Okay, if the timeline doesn't show up, you go to Window and you click on Timeline. So now we've got our timeline here. So we also have an animation folder with a frame in it. I'm going to rename this Sketch because that's what we're doing right now. We're going to be sketching out what our animation will be. Basically, it's just going to be a girl, a head and shoulder shot of a girl. We're not going to be animating body in this tutorial. That's a topic for another time. But we're going to have her head here, and I'm just going to go through and sketch what we're going to be working on here, the thing we're going to be animating. So I'll be right back once I finish. So now we have our base for what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to set this folder to blue right here so that we can see that it is not going to remain after we finish with the animation. Setting it to blue and lowering the opacity just makes it a little easier to draw over it. Like you see, if we're going to be drawing black lines over this, without it being blue, we really can't see where we are right here. So that's why I make this blue and tone that down a little bit. So this is our sketch folder, and if we were going to be doing complex movement, we would probably have a lot more frames, if not 2 animation folders, but for now I'm just going to make her blink by duplicating this layer, and I'm going to walk you through it again. So I right click and I click duplicate layer. Oops. I click duplicate layer and it becomes 2, and then I right click where I want 2 to show up and click on 2. So that's the whole process. Now I'm going to draw the next part of her blinking, which is basically just lowering the upper eyelid over the pupil. Then I'm going to duplicate layer and do all that again and finish the blink. The sketch blink is only going to be 3 frames while the animated blink is going to be 4. But we only need 3 here, and she is blinking right there. So now we can move on to the actual lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the timeline and click on New Animation Folder, and it's going to show up here, and I'm going to call it Lines. And then I'm going to put in a vector layer. The reason we want a vector layer is so that we can do, wait, one thing before I explain that. Once you have a new animation folder, you have to make it show up on the timeline by right-clicking the timeline and selecting a frame. There, now it's visible and now you can draw on it, because when it's not visible, you can't draw on it. So back to talking about vectors, if you are working in a vector layer, you can do this. Your line will automatically have points in it that you can move, which makes animation a lot easier. But unlike my other animation video where I literally used a pen and moved all of these trillions of points, we're going to be using the curve tool, and I have it set to 3 because on my canvas that's the best size for it. I might go a little thicker. I'm gonna try 5. Okay, I'm gonna stick with 3. So when you use this curve tool, you only have 3 points. You have the starting and ending point, and you have the curve point. So that's what we're going to be using. So for this animation, the things that are going to be moving are the hair and the eyes. So let's have this folder be the hair animation folder, and we'll get another one for the eyes. And what I'm going to do here to make things a lot easier is I'm going to put everything into a folder. So let's put this layer into a folder. We're going to call it 1. And when you put all of your animation things into a folder like this, you can have lines and you can have a color layer. And that just makes things a whole lot easier when you don't have to do first a line animation folder and then a color animation folder. So, since we only have the hair and eyes moving, what are we going to do about the face and the rest of the body that you can see? That I'm going to put in a folder called Static. I just give it names so that I can find it easily, and I've called it Static because it's not going to be moving. And I'm going to go through and put black lines there. And I could do this with a pen, but I want it to look just like the hair and eyes are going to look, with this really minimalistic, almost animated effect, like it could be animated but it just isn't. So that's what I'm doing here, and I will be back after I finish. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick colors to use for her. I have her skin tone, and I'm gonna do blue hair again. It's like a tradition for me to animate girls with blue hair. And how about a nice little orange shirt? And really vibrant pink eyes with maybe purple highlights. I don't know, we'll see about the eyes later. So now that I have these colors, I'm going to hide all the layers that are going to be moving, and I'm going to go through and color in everything that's not going to be moving. And we have to make the skin tone color go well above the hairline so that when the hair moves, there is no blankness below it. Then we just fill that in. And we'll fill in the shirt color. And I'm not going to do shading in this video, that's for the next section of this tutorial series. Okay, now that we have that done, we'll hide it so that we can see our sketch, and we're going to begin with the hair. What I'm going to do first is I'm just going to put black lines over everything I've sketched, using as few lines as possible so that the animation will be easier. And I'm just using a curve tool and clicking, dragging, curving, and dropping real quick. And we can use this tool here, the correct line tool, set it to control point and set it to move control point, and in this way we can move the points on the vector line. So I do that every now and then when the line isn't quite the way I want it. Alright, it looks good. Now we're going to get into the actual animation part. What we're going to do, just like with the sketch layer, we're going to right click and click duplicate layer, and it will give us a folder called 2. We'll advance by 1 frame and go to the hair part of this animation timeline thing, right click it and select 2. Now we have a new frame to work with, and we are going to move the points to animate the hair. This is the onion skin setting, and when you click on it you can see the previous frame. So I'm going to have that on so that we can see where we were before and where we are now. And this is useful so that you can make sure that you have not moved something too far, or that you have not forgotten to move a point. I'm going to have static visible right now so that I can see how the hair moves closer to her without having any mess ups, like having the hair accidentally go onto her neck. I don't want that to happen. And the wind direction for this tutorial is in this direction, so that is that. And I'm just going to go through and move the points, and I will be back once I have done 3 frames. Okay, now we can see the movement of these 3 frames, and I'm going to do another, and I'm going to explain something that I did in the 3rd frame. What I did in the 3rd frame was I added a line here, and we're going to be doing this throughout the animation to make it look a lot better. We're going to have these strands of hair, a few of them will actually split into 2 strands of hair while they're moving. So to demonstrate, I'm going to split, I think this strand. So I'm going to enable onion skin and move it a little. And I'm going to go to the top and add a very small strand coming off of it. And I'm going to make this a little thinner. And there we go. It should probably be closer to it for now. We'll have to move it out later. But now we have a hair movement where the hair isn't just blowing, it is actually being moved by the wind, being split and affected, and this gives a really nice touch to your animation, so you might want to try it. And I'm going to continue animating. This is going to be maybe 15 frames long, so I'm just going to go through and do that. Okay guys, here's a tip for animating hair. I have 9 frames here, and I'm going to do about 3 frames where there's very little movement at all. And this, well, before we go back into the cycle of the hair moving backwards, those 3 very slow frames will give the hair a feeling of gently floating a bit before it comes back down. So that's a tip for what I'm going to be doing right now. Okay, now let's color the hair. All I'm going to do is going to each layer, make a new layer, and color it. So I just made a new layer in the first folder, and I'm just going to take this color and color the hair here. So I'm going to go through and do that for all of the frames. Alright, we have the first bit done, and I'm going to follow the same principle for the eyes. So let's do this. It's going to have 4 frames, and I'll show you how I do that right now. Alright, that is it for this video. We have gone from sketching to line work and coloring. In the next video, we're going to do shading and highlights. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.